In this tutorial, we will be using QuickBooks Premier Accountant Edition 2013. We will also be using a sample manufacturing company's QuickBook file provided by QuickBooks. I will be teaching you how to create multiple users to QuickBooks. QuickBooks allows you to have up to 5 users per license. To do so, click the Company tab in the top ribbon and roll your mouse down to set up users and passwords. Select Set Up Users and a window entitled User List will appear. This screen will show you a list of users you have to set up for this QuickBooks file. You will automatically be logged on as the admin if you do not have any other users. To add a new user, click the Add User button in the upper right-hand corner of the window. This will bring a dialog box where you will enter the username for your new user. I will just type in my name. You do not necessarily need a password, though it is suggested that you create one for each user of the file. This ensures that no one besides a user can enter data, create transactions, and more under that person's username. A person committing fraud within a company can blame someone else easily by entering all fraudulent activities under someone else's username to create an audit trail of bad transactions leading back to that person. So it is important that you keep your passwords to yourself. Remember to check the Add User to this user to my QuickBooks License button, then select Next. You can now choose what the user has access to. You can create a username for your accountant and give them access solely to information for them by choosing External Accountant. You can also give employees admin rights or choose different areas of QuickBooks that you want to have allow access to. For this example, we will choose the selected areas of QuickBooks options. Click Next. There are 9 screens that follow where you have to choose what the user is allowed access to. The first is Sales and Accounts Receivable. This section includes sensitive information such as credit card numbers. We are going to allow this user to have access to create transactions and create reports. Click Next. You will move on to Purchases and Accounts Payable section. We are going to select No Access for this section. Click Next. We are now on the Checking and Credit Cards section. We will allow no access to this section as well. Click Next and move on to the Inventory section. We are going to allow this user to have full access to inventory. The next section is information about time tracking. The sample company we are working with uses QuickBooks time slips functions to keep track of employees' hours. We are going to allow this user to create transactions only, which will allow them to enter their own time. You are now halfway there. Click Next and you will move on to Payroll and Employees. We do not want this user to have access to payroll, so keep No Access selected. Click Next. You are now on the Sensitive Accounting Activities page. This includes areas such as transferring funds, making journal entries, and more that are very sensitive to fraud and errors. You should rarely allow user access to this information. We are going to keep No Access selected and click Next. The Sensitive Financial Reporting section overrides all sections previously determined that restricted access to reporting information. We are going to keep No Access selected and choose Next. This section is entitled Changing or Deleting Transactions. There are 2 selections to make here. The first asks if you want to allow the user to change or delete transactions in areas which they have access. We will keep this as Yes. The second option is whether we want to allow the user to change and delete transactions that were recorded before the closing date. We will discuss the closing date in a little bit. We will leave No selected and click Next. The final screen shows what you have selected for this user for each section in QuickBooks. To complete this user, click Finish at the bottom of the window. Click the X, then click OK on the next screen that appears. You will now return back to the user list and see your new user. Edit a user by selecting the user which you wish to edit and click Edit User. We will choose the admin to edit, as there is a feature for the admin that is not standard for other users. In this screen, you can add a password for the admin and select a challenge question and answer to help you to recover your password if you forget it. This is a common feature in most emails nowadays. Feel free to pause this tutorial to look through the challenge questions available to you. I'm going to hit Cancel to get out of the screen. I'm now going to teach you about the closing date. Click Closing Date to select the closing date for your company. The closing date allows you to set the date when your books close and a new accounting period begins. When you are in a new fiscal year and notice a mistake with your books that you want to go back and change, you will need to enter the transaction before your closing date. If you had set a closing date, QuickBooks will display a warning, or if you entered a password in this section, require a password to be entered in order to save that transaction. This also tracks all changes to the previous period made after the closing date. QuickBooks recommends setting a password that employees will need to enter in order to save transactions occurring before the closing date. This helps protect your books and financial records from possible fraud or errors. This is everything you need to know about setting up additional users in QuickBooks.